I promise you. Senator Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Ahuja, in 2016, after the OPM data breach, the timelines for processing clearances soared to over 2 years for a top secret clearance, and the backlog swelled to 725,000. Think of the thousands of individuals who just gave up the prospect of working for the federal government during that time because they needed jobs, and there are a lot of alternatives. I'm concerned that we now have another major data breach, and that is the Affordable Care Act breach in D.C., which affects a lot of Hill employees who get their insurance through get their ACA insurance through that DC system. First, is there an impact that you've seen from this latest data breach, which has exposed names, addresses, social security numbers, all sorts of information? And second, what can we do to make sure that we harden the systems that contain this information? Because obviously, if the data in the system is subject to identity theft, is going to make doing clearances much more difficult, as we saw in 2016.
Thank you, Senator, for that question. I can't speak specifically to the more recent data breach, but I can tell you, we've learned quite a bit at OPM from the data breach from 2015 and the work that we've done to ensure that we have a secure system. My colleague here, Ron Moultrie, spoke to the work that's happening within NBIS to shore that up under a zero trust architecture. I can tell you, with a lot of the IT modernization happening, moving to a cloud-based system, especially within our organization, a very aggressive timeline that we have for IT modernization within OPM, and we're not alone. This is happening across the federal government, and the work that's being led by the Office of the National Cyber Director, focused on federal government as well as across industry. So that's the work we're doing within OPM, but certainly we've taken lessons, and Vice Chairman Rubio mentioned the difference. At the time of the breach in 2015, we were sitting on legacy systems at the time, and we very much are working hard through the support of Congress to move off those legacy systems in order to take advantage of the latest technological capabilities and to move to the cloud, which inherently has more cybersecurity protections within it.
Thank you. Dr. Dixon, I want to get a better understanding of how the intelligence community does clearances versus the rest of government. It's my understanding that the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency is in charge of basic security clearances for approximately 95% of those in U.S. government. However, that leaves 5% approximately in the intelligence community who utilize a different investigative service provider or providers. Why are there different security clearance programs and databases for DoD versus the IC?
Thank you, Senator Collins. The processes are different, and while we do similar things with respect to figuring out if the person is fit to have the job, trustworthy to have the job, and then whether or not they are able to have a security clearance, we do that all in one process as opposed to making the person go through multiple processes. So yes, we do have our own databases, but we follow the same types of rules and regulations. And if you look at the standards and the guidelines that have been put out as part of Trusted Workforce 2.0, it's similar processes. Just rather than using their service provider, we're doing it ourselves, but we're following the same system, following the same types of questions, following the same types of information gathering. So if you just think of it as having multiple different ways to get the same information, that's the way that we're approaching it.
Do you honor the security clearances of DOD if an employee goes from working at, let's say, NGO to the CIA?
What this process will let us to do is to know where their process stopped and what we need to do to continue to bring it up to the level of a person that actually has to have the clearance level that we have within our community. So we will respect it, but we can't, it doesn't transfer completely because there are other steps that have not been taken with respect to that vetting.
I guess, and I realize my time's expired, but I guess I'm trying to understand whether a TSI clearance is the same across the federal government, or does it mean something different depending on which agency you work for?
So within the intelligence community, in addition to having, for example, the TS, we'll actually have sensitive compartmented information clearance level. So it is a different level of clearance than the TS that is not in the non-sensitive population. So there are additional questions, there are additional processes that we will use that they will not, which is why it's not a one-to-one transfer.
Senator Collins has hit the nail on the head. My view is, belief is, we have a complete